Lately, it feels like the RPGs that have been getting released on the PC Engine have been, how do I put this delicately? Complete garbage. And actually, this doesn't seem to just be a PC Engine problem. In the middle of 1991, it feels like everyone was taking a deep breath before going all in on RPGs again. Final Fantasy IV was the only big RPG ready to go on the Super Famicom. The PC Engine was on the verge of launching significant hardware that would change their platform, so why not hold your game back a couple of months for that? And the Mega Drive? Well, the Mega Drive was the Mega Drive. Into this gap steps Ravenhill Soft with Burai, Hachigyoku no Yuushi Densetsu. Don't worry, everyone just calls it Burai because it's a port of Burai. As you might have guessed from that, Burai was originally a computer RPG. It was probably the biggest RPG hit that River Hill Soft had, or at least it's the only one that seems to have made a lasting impression on people. Their mystery games, particularly the J.B. Harold series, are what they wound up being really remembered for. This is one of those situations where they reworked the game pretty heavily in porting it to the PC Engine. It's still recognizably Burai, but the story elements have shifted a bit. The interface is also a lot friendlier, although you wouldn't know by looking at it. So before I give you the plot of this RPG, I want to give you a quick quiz to see how well you've been paying attention to Japanese literary influences on video games. Because from the title, and the illustration on the title screen, you should be able to tell what classic novel the game draws its inspiration from. You don't even have to understand the double meaning of parts of the title because it's all just laid out right there on the screen for you. Lock in your answers now. If you said Hakenden, then give yourself full marks. And if you said 8 Dog Warriors, go ahead and give yourself some points anyways. Hakenden was a 19th century adventure novel about 8 scattered heroes getting brought together as part of a search for some scattered magic jewels. In Burai, we have 8 heroes identified by their magic jewels that appear before them, and a significant portion of the game is getting that team together. In the computer version, every hero, except 2 that were paired up, had their own introductory scenario that you could do in any order. The PC Engine version forces you to play these out a particular way, and it'll take you around 10 hours or so before the team comes together. The full plot of the game is that 6,000 years ago, there was a cosmic war, and the God of Darkness was sealed away by the God of Light. The last remaining follower of the God of Darkness hung out for a few millennia, before finally reviving him. That guy and all of his buddies got empowered by the God of Darkness, and of course they're planning on taking over the world. One small hang-up on that: reviving the God of Darkness also revives the God of Light. The God of Light is reborn as the infant prince of a kingdom, so the villain crew destroys that place immediately. The prince gets away with a handful of followers, and when those followers are attacked, they send out 8 magic jewels to find 8 new protectors for the prince. Zan the pirate, who's been captured and enslaved. Oroshi, a mysterious person with a connection to the gods, and who may have wandered in from another Ravenhill Soft game. Gonza and Mai, a brother and sister duo who are hunting for the 9-tailed fox that killed their parents. Lillian, a young woman who's looking for a childhood friend, and during the journey becomes convinced that Zan killed her father. Cao Lo, a young boy who can communicate with animals, and was traveling with his family when his father was selected to be one of the 8 heroes. Lamar Sebastian VII, a dapper, swashbuckling lizard man who learned his skills at a traveling circus. He has to return home because his father's dying. Oh, and in the sequel he invents a time machine. And finally, Alec, an old fortune teller who manipulates things to put the heroes and villains into direct conflict. That is a lot of dead parents among the cast. The PC Engine version of Burai starts you out playing Gonza and Mai's story. You start out on an island next to a town and have to go find the 9-tailed fox. And I started running into some trouble pretty quickly. It's come up time and time again for me that when I'm cataloging a different game every 2 days, I really don't have the time to dig into lengthy games. In particular, RPGs that have a slow start wind up looking pretty much the same throughout all of my footage. And Burai has an amazingly slow start. After an hour of play, I still couldn't survive more than 2 screens away from the starting town. But Burai has some very complicated mechanics, which I'll get to in a little bit. So maybe I was doing something wrong. Maybe there was a path I was supposed to follow or an area I was supposed to search so I could get more than the one piece of equipment that I bought at the start of the game, and then I could survive the encounters with 8 enemies that could one-shot me. So I looked up a walkthrough, and step 1 of that walkthrough was essentially, go grind for 3 hours. At the end of 1 hour of grinding, I was about halfway to the power that I'd need in order to survive, and the rate of growth was about to slow down a lot. So what makes Burai so complicated that you'd have to grind like that? Well, when you hit select, you'll bring up the game menu, and you can see your character's stats right there. This is broken down into 9 abilities, each of which has their own level, and are leveled separately. These stats are your health, attack power, special ability, speed, popularity, dexterity, curiosity, and defense. The map in Burai is broken into small regions where you have to walk off the edge to make progress, and every one of these regions has their own set of enemies that will randomly attack you. If you go one region north from the starting town, then you'll encounter the same types of enemies, but they'll appear in slightly larger groups. But that's a dead end with nothing else in that region. If you go to the east, the only other direction you can travel, then you'll encounter enemy groups where you need to have all of those stats up to around level 10 in order to survive. I think you can start to see the scope of the problem. Adding to the fun of that initial grind, there's only 2 types of monsters in those safer regions, and only one of them drops any money. So how do you level up your stats? Well, some things you get by fighting and getting hit, but the real key is that you need to study. Underneath each character's picture on the left-hand side, you'll see a little progress bar. This builds up as you're walking around, and when this fills up, you get another level in the stat they were studying. You can pick what each character will study, but not all of the stats are available for study. You can practice attacking, special skills, dexterity, defense, or curiosity. You can also choose to read a book, which will unlock additional skills if the appropriate character reads it. There's also an option to study nothing. And you might think, the little moon icon makes it look like they're choosing to rest, so maybe they recover instead of getting experience if you choose this. And no, they don't. If you choose to study nothing, then you get nothing. You're just throwing away character advancement for no good reason. You might have noticed that the health, attack power, special ability, and speed all have a current value and maximum value. Health is straightforward enough, but attack works in pretty much the same way, getting worn down over time, and if it runs out, then you're out of the fight. The special ability points are only used up when you use your special ability. The current value of these is represented by the 3 jewels below each character's portrait. As they get weaker, the gem will dim and eventually break. Speed gets used up when you dodge an attack, because that's what the speed level is for. You can recover health, attack, and speed by consuming a potion, which you can find more easily than you can purchase when you have a high curiosity level and defeat an enemy. The special ability points have to be recovered at a restoration shop in town. At these it costs 20 gold to restore one character, and not to full, that's about 20% recovery. If you spend 60 gold, then you can recover the entire party in one shot. Of course, when you only have 2 characters in your party, then spending 60 gold is less efficient. As for the other stats, dexterity increases your chance of critical hits, defense reduces the damage that you take, intelligence increases the strength of your special ability and reduces the damage you take from enemy special attacks, and popularity determines the prices that you'll get in shops. You start out with weapons, but you don't have any armor or shields. Gonza has hundreds of hit points, while Mai only has about 60. On the other hand, Mai has a ton of speed points, while Gonza has barely any. So I took all of my starting money, 200 gold, and bought a shield for Mai. Then I prioritized training her defense. I feel pretty confident that I made the right choice, since the only time that I really struggled with keeping her alive was when I dipped my toe into the eastern areas. But that's where I ended up. I got some stats to level 5, but was still slowly grinding away. I really needed a few thousand gold in order to properly equip them, but all of my money was going to the recovery shop. Burai just has a very, very slow start, and out of the 7 character scenarios, Gonza and Mai's scenario seems to be the one that plays the slowest. Or at least the other characters have more story events that occur early on, or aren't facing enemies that are so overwhelmingly powerful. One more quirk about Burai, it's half a game. Similar to Ys Book 1 and 2, the story here reaches a conclusion point, but then it continues onward into the next game. That game was already out on computers, of course, and the PC Engine will get it in 1992. While Burai wasn't very popular in Japan, I could find plenty of people with fond memories of it who considered the game to be a bit of a hidden gem. That popularity has led to a small problem for the game, since you can get a copy of Burai for just a couple hundred yen, and then the second half of the story is significantly harder to obtain. And this is an instance where I'm gonna have to refrain from any personal judgments. Burai seems like a fine RPG of the era that happens to have an extremely slow start. Even if I could make progress in this initial scenario, you have to complete 7 multi-hour scenarios before things come together. Individually leveling multiple stats seems inconvenient, but you also have multiple paths that you're working on simultaneously. I guess what it comes down to for me is Burai is a bit of a weird one. I wouldn't call it a bad RPG by any stretch, but it's got enough quirks to throw somebody off. For me, I doubt I'd ever return to it. I'll have to look at Burai 2 eventually, and I didn't merge it into this video because apparently there's some changes between the two. In the very little I could glean from the introduction movies, and the half-dozen one-line conversations with townspeople, I didn't see anything that made me go, yeah, I want to experience more of Burai. But it's also very possible that I'm not getting the full picture.